Okay. All right, so we're recording the meeting now. I'm going to start the slideshow, and then after the slideshow, we'll have some time for the Q&A. So, sharing the screen. So can you see the screen?
Yep.
Okay. So here we are. Let me go. There we go. I'm gonna move this over.
It's set, so it's giving you the next one.
I know. Gotta move this over here. Let's share the other way. Okay, so here's the screen. So this is time management and self-care for grad students. So the topic of this meeting is because of the stress that we face as grad students in grad school. So stress is a reaction to a changing, demanding environment, and there are generally considered to be two types, eustress and distress. So eustress is kind of like that motivating, positive type of stress that gets you going and gets you to get things done, whereas distress is what we consider the negative flight or fight response type of stress.
Right.
So that kind of stress can have detrimental effects on your mental and physical health. So that could be, sleep problems, stomach problems, immune system not working as well as it should, and anxiety and depression. So there are lots of common stressors for grad students. These are changing times for, it's a different environment than it is in your undergrad. So there are sometimes new demands and expectations. Balancing your course load with other life responsibilities. You're older now than you were when you were in undergrad, so you probably have some different roles and responsibilities than you did when you were younger. Finances and paying for your education can be stressful. Some of us have assistantships, some of us don't. Some of us are taking out loans, and so there can be the stress with if you're going to get employment that you will pay back those loans later, and fear of not getting that kind of employment. Other stressors such as outside relationship conflicts, health issues, parents and children. Some of us are parents ourselves. So without sharing too much, any other stressors you can think of? And you can unmute on the little corner of the screen if you want to talk. Nobody else has any stressors? Kachula?
I have a lot of stressors. I think sometimes, I don't know if this is but like secondhand stress. I get stressed from students that I serve and supervise with kind of their life changes and kind of helping them through stuff. It's kind of hard to always hide my own stress, and so something to get like secondhand stress from them. I don't know if like advisors like Dr. Mina feels that way or anyone else feels that way.
Yeah, sort of like taking on the stress that somebody else is feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, when you're working with people too, they come with a lot of high stress situations, and so it's common, it's a really difficult. I guess it's easy to do to feel like you want to try to help them in every way that you possibly can, and you maybe walk away at the end of the day feeling exhausted. Like when I did therapy for 8 hours, I would just come home and just be a complete dial tone because you just feel so stressed out. You feel so exhausted from helping people all day.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have that experience.
Yeah. People who are very empathetic can tend to take on the feelings of the people around them.
Right.
So we'll get more into some coping mechanisms for that. So the next slide.
Yeah. So stress is able to be managed, and I think that's important. Like Ali said, stress is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just one of those things you need to. It's a U-shaped curve, right? You can have too little is probably not great, but because you're not motivated to do anything, but too much is probably also terrible. And so you're trying to shoot for some kind of balance in the middle of a decent amount of stress, something that's motivating you to keep yourself going in graduate school, but also making sure that you're taking the time to really not overdo it in terms of trying to find time to care for yourself.
Yeah.
So, like, kind of practically, what this looks like is finding some of the right coping mechanisms. Stress starts to bleed into anxiety and depression when stress starts to exceed your ability to cope.
Yeah.
And
so we have that balancing
right,
image there.
right. And we want to use the rubber band analogy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So you can be resilient to stress to a certain point, because if you think of ourselves as a rubber band, we can stretch the rubber band so far and it'll go back to how it was originally. But if you stretch it too far, it might break.
Right.
So that's just a little visual we can think of. Like, are you stretching yourself so thin that you might not be able to, to handle it? So.
Yeah, and that's really important, is to kind of ask yourself, like, how stretched thin am I in this moment? Am I, and what is a responsibility that I can maybe shirk, or maybe it's not as important as other things, or that I don't necessarily need to do perfectly in order for it to be done. Like, there's always this balance you're kind of playing with yourself in graduate school of trying to decide what's the most important thing for me to do, and what's something that doesn't necessarily need all of my best effort.
Prioritization is part of that too.
Right. So remembering that we're all in this together is really important. Making sure that everyone is going through what you're going through as well.
Yeah. We're all in similar situations to each other. Obviously, everybody's unique, but there are a lot of common undertones.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, a lot you're having, and one of the nice things about having just people in your same classes is that they're sharing the same experiences with you, and are likely even taking on some of the same, or like experiencing some of the same stressors. Yeah. So connecting with people in your class, is a really powerful and important thing. Just to say, hey, I'm going through this by myself. Like, is anyone else having this experience? Like, even in an online format, I would imagine like a discussion post. Like, hey, like, is anyone else struggling with this assignment? Because I don't really understand.
Yeah, and I know Liliana usually puts a kind of community forum kind of.
Oh, that's cool.
That we can use answers for common questions and kind of like lean on each other a little bit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and then like also reaching out to faculty advisors, or faculty or instructors for guidance. Like, when I teach classes here at UWM, I keep office hours, and I'm always available to my students through email if there are issues. So, anyone else have any like ideas that maybe how you cope with stress? We're going to talk about some techniques to cope with stress in just a minute, but I'm just curious if anyone has anything that they use that's helpful.
Any good, like any of these examples on the slide? Like, does anybody a journaler?
Yep. See some journaling.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
I rely on it a lot.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, because it's like taking like a mental inventory. Even if it's mental, you can kind of journal that way, or sometimes it can be really nice to write it down. Sometimes you can write down the things that you wanted to get done, or you can write down the things that you did get done. And sometimes seeing that written down can be really helpful.
Yeah, that's a good process of just going through the process of externalization. Also, just like, there's a lot of good research, and just getting it out of your head and onto a piece of paper can help you stop thinking about it so much.
Yeah.
So talking about it can do the same thing.
Yeah.
So anybody like physical activities is really good, especially if people are experiencing symptoms of depression. Most of you may know that is just as effective as taking medication. So that's really, I highly recommend being active.
Being active, yeah.
So for me, I have a lot of trouble, I think, letting myself get to the coping self-care exercises. I have a problem detaching. I feel like talking about it usually helps to relating to other people for me.
Mhm.
But I feel like it's hard for me to like take that second or take, well, I should say like hours to like meditate or like go get a massage or
Mhm.
fully like commit to an activity. That's kind of where my challenge comes in.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that that is a huge challenge because self-care does cost something,
Mm.
right? It costs time.
Mhm.
And maybe, I don't know, this is Amanda talking, right?
Yeah, sorry. This is
Yeah.
Amanda.
No, I saw like the little like screen like do the thing and I was like, I think it's Amanda. I just want to be sure. Yeah. When you have that block of time, it costs something to take that time. And I wonder if it sounds like it costs a lot. When you think of like, this is what I do to unwind. This is what the challenge is that it just costs something like really significant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so sometimes like finding like smaller activities that that you can do in just the moment, even if they aren't maybe ideal,
Mhm.
can be really beneficial.
Something I do is build it into my day.
Mhm.
Like, there are things that I have to do. Like, I have to walk my dog.
Mm-hmm.
So I consider that time kind of like me and her time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to walk her anyway. So I kind of make it an intentional thing. Like, this is something, like, I'm taking a break from my studying right now, or taking a break from whatever, and I'm going to take my dog for a walk, because doing that will help me
Mm-hmm.
fill my own cup back up.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a really good kind of like, and having an activity like that, like I run in the mornings, and that's kind of my time to. I have a morning routine I go through, and that's like my time to be by myself,
Mhm.
and I really cherish that time.
Yeah.
And so, and even though it means that I get to UWM a little bit later, than maybe I should, like I get come in a little bit later, but I also stay a little later, and I realize that not everybody has that privilege of that flexibility. But but the creativity and the difficulty is trying to find maybe carving out a few minutes of your day to do something that you care about. We'll talk in a minute about a technique that maybe might help too.
Let's move on to the next one. I have some more ideas here on the slide.
Yeah.
So part of managing stress is managing your time, like you're saying. And I touched on this before, but prioritization is really important for that. And prioritizing your things that you need to do based on the urgency of when you need to get them done. I personally use a paper planner, like a journal, and also I like to use the online calendar that we have with the task reminders. I think that's really helpful to be able to remind myself of when deadlines are coming up or when assignments are due, to keep myself on task. And then, like we said, dedicating time for activities that you enjoy and building it into your schedule. So most people do have a couple of minutes at least a day to devote to themselves. Even if it's just a few minutes, that can really help you recharge. Another technique is rewarding yourself for completing tasks. Like, if I'm trying to get through an article and I tell myself, once I get done with this article, I'm going to spend 5 minutes on Instagram, something like that. And we'll kind of get more into that technique. And then just also being flexible, and you can plan out your day as much as you want to, but you also have to accept that your plans might not go exactly as planned. Nobody's perfect. You don't want to be too rigid about it and make it more stressful. But it can help you remind yourself of the big picture. So our goals, like, we want to get done with our classes this semester, or even bigger than that, we want to successfully complete this program. And just reminding ourselves of why it is that we decided to do this in the first place, and where it's going to take us. And sometimes taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture can really help. You want to talk about the Pomodoro?
Yeah. So like a time management system can also be helpful. I use the Pomodoro technique myself, so I mean, the best evidence I can give is that I think it works because I use it. So the idea behind the Pomodoro technique, and there's a link on that explains more about it on PowerPoint. But what it is that you take 25, you kind of dedicate, you make a list of tasks that you need to accomplish. And then you allow yourself to do one Pomodoro per technique, and that's a 25-minute interval of just pure working. And then you take a Pomodoro per task, and then you take a 5-minute break. where you go
Yeah.
on Instagram,
Mhm.
you do something like that, and then you switch back to doing another Pomodoro towards that task. And you measure things in terms of how many Pomodoros that you need to do to accomplish things. After
Mhm.
4 Pomodoros, you take a longer break, you take a 15-minute break. So you're constantly kind of rewarding yourself for working.
Yeah.
Um,
Pomodoro means
tomato in Italian. Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine
Yeah.
a series of tomatoes.
Yeah. It was based off a little tomato timer that somebody was using, but that's the general idea behind it. And I know some people might say, well, that sounds really nice and good, but I have all these things I have to do. But the idea behind the Pomodoro technique is what ends up happening is that if you try to sit down and work for an hour,
Yeah.
you're not efficiently working an entire hour. Your
Mind is
mind is wandering,
yeah.
you're doing something else. So scheduling that activity of just saying, I know my mind's going to wander,
Mhm.
is something that might be useful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, using that to your advantage. And isn't it shown that you tend to get more done
Yes.
in an hour than you would if you just try to go straight through?
Right, yeah. So you want to make sure that you're spending more time you want to spend, like if you're activity scheduling something, you're going to be more efficient at that than if you just say, I'm going to block off this specific, a nebulous chunk of time to get something done, and you'll waste time.
Right.
Then you'll feel guilty for wasting time.
Sitting down and saying, I'm going to write a 10-page paper in 2 hours, probably not going to work out.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and that's another kind of like Allie was mentioning before, having realistic goals.
Realistic goals,
yeah.
And then we kind of touched on this, but setting aside specific times to relax and avoid burnout, and building that into your schedule. Like, for example, last weekend, I knew that I had a date with my friend, and we were going to go see Bohemian Rhapsody, and I needed to get an assignment for a class done before I left for that. So that was like a good motivator for me to be like, I have to get this done because otherwise I'm not going to enjoy this movie if I'm thinking about how I still have that paper to finish. So I built that into my schedule intentionally because I knew that I wanted to get something done beforehand and that I would reward myself with the treat afterwards.
Absolutely.
So we'll have other ways to practice self-care continued on the next slide. Yeah,
so I mean, one of the things here is that self-care is not a selfish act, and I think that's something that is kind of, I think it's often, especially going into like a human service profession, like we tend to think like we have to give until we don't really have much left. But we're kind of taking a step back and saying, I actually am a priority. I am important. There are things that I do that matter, that matter to me. In order for myself to recharge, I need time with my friends. If you're an extrovert, I need time alone. If I'm an introvert, I need to spend some time doing something in order to be at my best. It's not self-care. A lot of times it's kind of joked to be like self-indulgence, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go
take a bubble bath and eat a giant piece of cake.
Yeah, and that's self-care. Look at me, I'm gonna watch movies for the next 10 hours, and that's self-care. But the key difference really is that self-care is a time to it's just a kind of a time to recharge. And I think the key difference is that you're not using it to avoid something. You're using it as a way of you're using it as a way of taking time for yourself because you need to do basic things like eat, sleep, shower, exercise, get the things that you need. That's what we mean by self-care, not use it as procrastination or avoidance, task
or
avoidance.
Just overindulgence.
Right.
Yeah, but it's really about self-preservation and making sure that you are making yourself a priority.
Yeah, totally.
So like I mentioned before about the cup analogy, like you can't pour from an empty cup. If you have nothing left of yourself, how are you gonna get anything done or help anybody else?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely. It's individual, so like there's no one right way to do self-care. It does mean different things to different people. And so finding kind of doing some journaling or a reflective process and saying kind of what are some things that asking yourself, what are some things that I need in order to be the most effective I can be at my job. So sometimes that could be things like setting boundaries. Sometimes it could be like changing your expectations for what you can accomplish in the day based on your previous experiences. So instead of saying I'm going to write a 10-page paper in 2 hours, you say you set a realistic goal and then try to accomplish that goal. So one of the things that research says is that if we set a goal and achieve it, we're happier. And so if you set realistic goals and achieve them for what you can accomplish in that time, then you might be happier
Yeah.
and feel like you're more productive.
And you kind of get into the habit of
Mhm.
being able to reach those goals and
Yes.
getting into that mindset of, okay, I can do this.
Mm-hmm. So sometimes using Pomodoros or using some other system of just saying like, this is what I'm going to do at this time can a lot of times be very helpful.
Yeah.
Asking for help and support, from people that you care, that you trust, getting enough sleep, taking time to enjoy food. Food is great. We all love food. And
Mhm.
so finding that maybe not necessarily feeling guilty, making sure you're seeing your physical and mental health providers if needed, and just making sure you're going in for checkups,
Mhm.
going to the dentist,
Getting
things
your
like
teeth
that.
cleaned.
Yeah.
Flossing.
Deep breathing, meditation. And meditation can look differently for many different people. So a lot of times when we think about meditation, we're thinking sitting on a pillow for 10 hours, thinking about nothing. But there's lots of different ways to do meditation. My meditation time is running in the morning. And so that's a way that I take time for myself
Yeah.
in order to just meditatively kind of go through my day and go through what I'm thinking about.
Mhm.
Sometimes that can be like actual time set aside, but I think the point of meditation is really to try to find time set aside where you feel like that you can just kind of relax
Mhm.
and relax and think and kind of empty your mind of things that are going on. Deep breathing has been very helpful for immediately reducing stress.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of science to support that.
Yeah.
Journaling, you talked about that, or taking mental inventory. Does anybody else have any ideas for self-care practices that they do that are helpful?
I would say that doing projects like art projects and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Creative
That might
outlet.
be something, some type of outlet that way. Be creative, knitting or sewing or painting, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Definitely.
like a creative process, because this it's a very different. It's graduate school is not like known for being very creative, and so like having kind of like that creative process of being time where I can just freely express myself, probably is a great self-care technique for sure. That's a great example.
Yeah.
I just recently kind of realized that, not realized, but like self-care is very like consumerist. And so recently heard from Roxane Gay when I went to her presentation, really saying that the joy that you get from self-care should be kind of like kept to yourself. And so like you don't always have to tell people that you're taking care. You don't always have to showcase like your self-care.
Mhm.
But I like going to church, and it takes up a lot of time as well, but like once a month or like twice a month going to church, I think really helps me kind of just like in that spirituality aspect too.
Yeah, having like a community of people that
Mm-hmm.
that you connect with and
And a spiritual practice.
spiritual practice for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Lot of great like health benefits and psychological benefits wrapped
yeah.
into communities and
Mhm.
spiritual practices.
Yeah,
So,
especially when
yeah.
those communities are about like coming together and
Mhm.
helping each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of benefits to that. For
Absolutely.
Sure. One thing I would say about boundaries too.
Oh, were you going to say
Is it
something?
Kalia?
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
I like listening to podcasts on my drive into
yeah.
work or to school because I have an half-an-hour drive. So
Mhm.
just putting something in that's more uplifting.
Mhm.
Like I like Oprah's Super Soul Sunday ones, and so she's just talking with people about how they energize themselves and
Mhm.
uplift each other. So that's another way I like to
Yeah,
do
it's
self-care.
good that's like built into your day too.
Mhm.
That's good.
Yeah, you have time to be able to just say like, this is my dedicated time of listening to this.
Mhm.
When I traveled for work, I listened to audiobooks in the car a lot, and I
Yeah.
remember that being a very relaxing
Yeah,
experience.
I like podcasts and audiobooks a
Right.
lot too.
All right.
All right. Next one. This is just question and answer time. So I don't think we need this and stop sharing this, but any questions that you have for me or the professional counselor here?
I was going to ask you about the Pomodoro effect.
Yeah.
When you do it, let's say you do your 25 minutes,
Mhm.
should you do your 25 minutes, 5-minute break, and then go back to what you were doing, or should you multitask?
So you should focus on so you make a task list for each thing that you have to do, And then you practice, and then you use it one Pomodoro per specific task.
Okay.
So yeah, and that's so you make sure you dedicate that one time. Task switching or multitasking. Multitasking is not really effective or for productivity. A lot of times you end up doing two things worse. And so like, and sometimes task switching is needed because your attention is being divided. But if you have to task switch, completely task switch instead of like trying to like maintain something in the background and then also do something like that. But ideally, when you're using the Pomodoro technique, you should try to be focused on just one specific task, break, and then return to that task until you're done, and then move on to the next one. That's a good clarification. Anyone else have anything?
Semester's kind of
Wrapping up.
We only have about a month left, so stressful time. Yeah.
For sure.
But hopefully this was helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
You enjoyed it.
Thank you. It was really good.
Oh, good.
Awesome.
I'm glad.
Yeah, I think that. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I think that I would like to try out that technique, the Pomodoro, and think a little bit more about small steps I can take to kind of take some time for me and unwind a little bit.
Yeah, like smart tasks. S is, oh gosh.
I know, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember what it is. Sorry. You're looking to me and I'm like, I don't know.
Timely is T.
Measurable is M.
Measurable, achievable,
realistic.
What is S?
Specific.
Yeah. So we got them.
We got it. Between the two of us.
Yeah. One thing I was gonna say about boundaries too, that's been an important thing for me to learn more recently is being able to say no to things, especially at work where
Me too.
Yeah. And I found that when you start being able to say no or find somebody else that can help the person do what they want you to do, then it ends up being better in the long run because they will stop coming to you for every single thing.
Yes, absolutely. And also like taking time to work in places where you know you can't be interrupted is really, really important.
Yeah.
If you can do that, and I realize that's kind of a privileged thing because not everyone is able to do that. But if you can, it is better for your productivity. The only other thing I'll say about the Pomodoro technique is there are multiple apps in online timers. So just kind of Google it and look around. There are some things that might work and some that are free. I know there's a couple of freebie ones. So.
Oh, I forgot to share the resources.
Yeah.
I'm gonna share those again.
Oh, okay.
Just my head. So here's a list of mental health resources that are available to.
I didn't get you. I'll put the number.
Yeah, we'll get it later. But so yeah, one resource if you're experiencing mental health concerns and symptoms and you want to talk to a counselor, University Counseling Services is available to SEGP paying students. So online students like myself aren't eligible for that. But there are some other options.
Yeah, if you have to pay SEG fees, and it's 12. I believe it's 10 to 12 sessions per academic year, and those sessions are renewable when you come back for the next year. So a lot of people think it's just 12 sessions total, but you actually can come back for an additional 12 sessions.
Yeah, university employees get EAP benefits, so I can go see a counselor for 6 sessions per issue, which is very nice, a very nice benefit. Other benefits for other occupations depends on where you work, but that's one. Luckily, even though I take classes online, I can get those benefits as an employee. You want to talk about the Columbia St. Mary?
Yeah. So there's also the UWM Psychology Clinic where they do cognitive behavioral therapy there, and some assessments for I think some pretty low fees. I don't know what their fee schedule I think is online. Columbia St. Mary's Center for Psychotherapies is a low-cost therapy option for people who are in Milwaukee. It is staffed by the psychiatry residents at MCW, all under supervision. And so they see people there. They're doing the rotations there for therapy. And you have the option of getting on a wait list and seeing them. I think it's $10 a session. It's pretty affordable. So that is an option that is available as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, okay, well, thanks again to everybody who came.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other burning questions before we?
I was just gonna say, Allie, do you plan on sharing the recorded video out?
Yeah, that's why I recorded it so I could send it out.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that would be great because I know that there's a lot of people that will benefit from this
Yeah,
as
there are
well.
a few people who wanted to come but weren't able to make it at this time, so that's why I wanted to record it to send it out to folks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope you all have a great weekend and take some time for self-care.
Mhm.
Prioritize your tasks and reach out to each other and to your faculty advisors and let us know how we can assist.
Okay.
All
Talk
right,
to you
nice meeting you. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah. Good to see
Thank
you all.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.